sounds good. Fantastic. Sounds good. All right, good morning. Welcome back. Today's day 2 of our tech track for CTO, and yesterday we touched a little bit on alternatives and assured position, navigation, and timing. And that kind of service obviously is important because GPS, which have and is and will continue to serve us well. But we do have some challenges, as you're aware, of many of the different incidences that we come across. So our program office, PMWA 170, we do communications and GPS-based PNT services. We've been working closely with a variety of vendors to address some of the shortfalls in our current PNT solutions, not limited to GPS, obviously. So this morning we'll have a quick talk between Mr. Michael Berger, who's our Assistant Program Manager for Management for Engineering in the PNT space, well, a lot of acronyms, and he'll give you a quick rundown on APNT solutions, and I will bring in a little bit of an NGSO, non-geostationary orbit flavor to that. After that, after a 15-minute break, we will then have a panel session, so please stay for the full gambit of activities here. If we have a little bit of time, we'll tell you what goes down in what an event called Slam Time, SATCOM, LEO, and MEO. Technical information meetings and exchange. It's like an industry day, but we actually have dialogue with industry. So without further ado, I'll bring up Michael to give his portion of the talk.
Hello, everyone. I've already been introduced, so I'm going to jump right into the brief. As I'm going through this, feel free to ask questions during, or feel free to hold them to the end. There's not a lot of material, so I don't feel like there's any time pressure, and I prefer it to be more of a conversation, just me talking at you for half an hour. So today we're covering positioning, navigation, and timing overview from the Navy's perspective, some of the high-level categories of alt-PNT and technology available, the trade-off analysis that should be looked at when determining whether a alt-PNT solution is appropriate, and then some of the relationships for alt-PNT and industry and how you might be able to get your products into government PORs. So if you guys are here, you're probably experts in PNT already, but just to give a high-level overview, positioning, navigation, and timing is the foundation to support all mission areas. So you can see at the screen, you need it to fire weapons, you need it to navigate, anything using Internet of Things on your ship or aircraft, needs accurate time, communication systems need accurate time, and for situational awareness and for common operational picture, that obviously needs positioning and timing as well. So without good position and without good timing, you're not able to perform your missions, you're not able to fight your ship or fight your aircraft. And as PNT data is becoming required for an ever-increasing number of systems, as all of these systems are becoming networked together, PNT is just becoming more and more important. And one thing to be aware of is the DoD for a long time has heavily relied on GPS, and per policy, it is the principal and primary source of PNT information across the Department of Defense. So, what is alt-PNT? There is no definition universally used or in the DoD dictionary for alt-PNT. So for the purpose of this brief, when I say alt-PNT, it means non-GPS. Some misconceptions about alt-PNT. Some people believe GPS isn't invulnerable, so we should throw it away, we should just use other things completely. That is not the direction the DoD is moving. GPS per policy is still the primary source of PNT, but what we want is alternative and complementary sources. So alternative meaning able to be used in the absence of GPS, instead of GPS at times, and complementary, meaning working with GPS to increase its performance characteristics in some perspective, such as accuracy, integrity, reliability, coverage, etc. There really needs to be a paradigm shift about alt-PNT. So people need to understand GNSS, so other global constellations like GPS, Baidu, GLONASS, are not the only source of PNT. We determined PNT before GNSS was there, and we're going to continue to determine PNT using GNSS and using other technologies. People need to focus on the specific application that they need the PNT for. So not every system should be served by the same PNT system. One example is submarines. The reason why submarines have such good inertial measurement units is because they don't always have GPS. So you want to look at where the system's going to be used, when it's going to be used, what reliability it needs, what accuracy it needs, and what kind of size, weight, and power equipment can fit on the platform, and you're going to use all of those considerations to determine what an appropriate alternate PNT solution is to integrate. And really, to increase resiliency, we want ubiquitous PNT sources. So we want PNT that is able to work at all times and is not relying on external systems like GNSS. So the driver for alt-PNT. So I took two quotes from the DoD Chief Information Officer's PNT strategy. So it is increasingly clear that space-based PNT services provided by GPS will be targeted and will not always be available in contested military operating areas or perhaps globally. Alternative sources of sufficiently accurate PNT information are required to assure continuity of PNT availability as the joint force confronts future challenges. And then the assessment of where the DoD is right now is that the DoD's overdependence on GPS has become a vulnerability that must be addressed through the incorporation of alternative and complementary PNT capabilities. That was written in strategy published in 2018, and looking at it in 2025, we have the exact same problems. There have been movement towards implementing solutions that the strategy calls for, but by and large, they're not there yet, or they're not there in quantity. So this is still an area that the DoD is actively working on and needs to improve on. So I talked about alternate PNT, or alt-PNT. Now I want to talk about assured PNT. So assured PNT is the ability to provide operational forces continuous access to position, velocity, attitude, and time with confirmed integrity and sufficient accuracy to perform their missions under the complete range of threat conditions. So DoD systems are required to be navigation warfare compliant. Being NAVWAR compliant means that they're providing assured PNT, really. So any system using PNT or generating PNT has this NAVWAR compliancy, which means in their expected operational environment, they need to meet all of the characteristics listed there for assured PNT. And the milestone decision authority is not supposed to let them proceed in the acquisition process without looking at NAVWAR compliancy and without testing to NAVWAR compliancy prior to fielding. So there is a big push to actually ensure that we're fielding systems that are going to be survivable in a contested navigation warfare environment. So we call this the assured PNT pyramid. Since this is distro A, we've stripped out all of the systems that go alongside this pyramid. But it goes from bottom to top, not contested, to contested environment. So when you're not in a contested environment, you really could use anything to determine PNT. And since GPS is easiest, that's what people are going to do. But as there's jamming, as there's spoofing, as the GPS constellation is not functioning properly or any other reason, you need other systems than just GPS. So first, you normally look at GPS anti-jam antennas so that when there's a contested electromagnetic environment, you're still able to get a GPS solution. But at a certain point, those may not be able to provide you position, velocity, and time and that's when you need alt-PNT, so alternatives to GPS. So I already touched on this a little bit earlier, but the use cases for alt-PNT again, complementary, so increasing GPS performance, and alternative for when GPS is not available. And the appropriate alt-PNT system is really going to depend on the consumer systems that need PNT, the performance requirements, the concept of employment for your system and for the systems requiring PNT, as well as the intended operational environment. So I'm going to quickly just give a high-level view of some of the categories of alt-PNT so that people are aware of what there is out there and what could be developed. So this is the standard problem that drives incorporation of alt-PNT. GPS is a weak signal, and because of that, it's easy to jam. So the strength of a signal in free space decreases with distance squared. So if we have a satellite that's 20,000 kilometers away, and we have a jammer that's 20 kilometers away, the strength of the signal from the jammer is felt 10,000 times stronger than the strength of the signal felt from the satellite. So you can do whatever anti-jam you want, you can do whatever smart algorithms you want, but at a certain point, it's just easier for the jammer to drown out the signal from GPS. And that really has been the big driver historically behind alternate PNT. So, as well as local interference, which is what I just talked about, there are some other use cases for alt-PNT. So there's catastrophic failure, and that's primarily means if GPS as a global constellation is not working for whatever means. So that could happen because of solar storms or some other space-based event, or that could happen because of an attack on the GPS constellation. For the longest time, people have relied on the standard positioning service and precise positioning service availability levels, where people expect it to be available globally at all times with an extremely high level of reliability, and that may not be a good assumption for a contested environment. And then non-traditional domains. I already talked about submarines, but I'll go back because that's a great example. If you're underwater, you might not be able to get GPS, so depending on your operational environment, you're going to need other sensors to provide position, velocity, and time. So the first category I'm going to talk to is space-based PNT. So GNSS and the regional navigation satellite services are primarily what people are using, but some of the commercial systems like Zona, like TrustPoint, like some of the other vendors who spoke yesterday are coming in and providing space-based PNT alternatives to the government constellations. So these systems are generally great. They provide highly accurate positioning and timing. They normally have a high level of availability. You can change the message content coming down from the satellites to provide encryption so that not everyone can use the message and the message can be harder to spoof. So there are a lot of advantages. Some of the challenges, I've already talked about it, but jamming, spoofing, and anything that damages operations of the constellation. The next group I'll talk about are non-space-based PNT. So these are generally less accurate than space-based PNT. They're used for aircraft to land today. That's primarily where we're using these types of systems. For anyone who might be familiar with long-range navigation, LORAN, which was used by the Coast Guard for vessels to navigate primarily when GPS wasn't around. That system was shut down, but there has been interest in an eLORAN. I can't talk about the US government pursuing or not pursuing something like that, but I've seen that there's been interest from other countries primarily. And then there is a local time distributed from organizations like NIST and the US Naval Observatory over two-way satellite time transfer and network time protocol. And for anyone curious about that, you can learn more about it in the Federal Radio Navigation Plan, talks all about it. So some of the drawbacks for this is terrain masking. generally can cause a lot of problems. When you're not broadcasting from space, the curvature of the Earth really limits your range, so you often need more ground stations. The ground stations as well may be vulnerable because it's much easier to damage something on the ground than something in space. And then you have all of the same risk areas as GNSS, where whatever is producing and distributing the PNT information may be vulnerable to various threats. The next area I'll talk about is signals of opportunity. So this is primarily using transmitted signals that aren't intended to be a source of PNT, but that you're able to make available of. So there's been a lot of research into this, and I can't talk too much about specific technologies that have been looked at, but if you know where something is broadcasting from, you're often able to use that to get a ranging measurement. And then through multilateration, the same way you do GPS, you're able to determine your position. The next area I'll talk about are natural phenomena. So natural phenomena, again, won't be as accurate as GNSS, but they have the great advantage of not relying on any external systems. So you don't need any information coming in. You don't need to worry about if someone is attacking what's providing you PNT. It's just whatever is on your platform developing a PNT solution. So some of the primary technologies being looked at is celestial navigation, vision navigation, bathymetry, radar odometry, barometers, compasses. People have looked at gravitational navigation. People have looked at magnetic navigation. There's a lot of research across the DoD in these various areas, because even if you don't get the super accurate positioning fix, it's generally going to be good enough for most purposes, and it's very difficult to attack, and it's very difficult to interfere with the Earth's magnetic field or with the stars in the sky, so it's much more reliable. The next area I'll talk about is internal. So most people, I'm sure, are aware of inertial measurement units and gyroscopes, which are commonly integrated in inertial navigation systems. So these have been used for ship navigation and for aircraft navigation for decades and decades, and they're not going away. Right now, in the absence of GPS, this is primarily what the DoD relies on. And over time, accelerometers are getting better, gyroscopes are getting better, clocks are getting better, and generation over generation, they're getting smaller and more reliable. So this is not something that's going away, and is definitely extremely valuable to the DoD's PNT architecture. So this is also coming from the DoD CIO's PNT strategy. So on the left, you'll see all the PNT sources that I talked about. On the right, you'll see the goal, which is a flexible and agile DoD PNT enterprise architecture, where all the systems in the DoD are navigation warfare compliant. Now, everything in the middle is what's gluing them together. So there's a goal for modular open system approach. So whenever a commercial entity or a government research entity comes and says, hey, we have this great way of providing you positioning, velocity, attitude, timing information, we're able to quickly ingest it, quickly get it integrated, have a sensor fusion algorithm, provide the best PVT solution, and then provide it to anyone who needs that information. So for the Navy surface ships, we have GPNTS, is that sensor fusion system and system designed to ingest all of that PVT. For aircraft, the REGI program is the program of record designed to serve that purpose. So that's an embedded GPS and INS, but it's resilient because it will take in alternate PNT information. So alt-PNT trade-off analysis. So no one is going to come to the DoD and say, this is the PNT solution, you should use this in all cases, it is the best, don't look at anything else. So these are some of the considerations that the platforms really have when determining what an appropriate PNT solution is. So size, weight, power, and cost. This has historically been the driver for people making decisions on whether to integrate something on their platforms. If something is too heavy, if it draws too much power, if it's too large, no one is sticking it on an aircraft. But maybe it's that large, it doesn't fit an aircraft, but it could fit a ship or a submarine. So it's really going to depend on the platform. The difficulty of fielding, modernizing, and sustaining. A huge percentage of the DoD's budget is spent on modernizing and sustaining equipment. So if you design some fancy sensor that takes a whole bunch of software that constantly needs to be patched, stigged, modernized, has a whole bunch of external dependencies, and is expensive to maintain, people may not want to integrate this on lower cost platforms. Cybersecurity risks. Cyber is a big problem and a big worry area across the DoD. So one of the reasons why everyone likes the internal systems is they don't necessarily rely on a lot of software. They don't rely on external dependencies for information coming in. So cybersecurity is definitely a concern that people will have. And then all of the PNT performance characteristics. So the signal characteristics, meaning the frequency, the power strength, et cetera, accuracy, availability, confidentiality, coverage, reliability, fix rate, system capacity, ambiguity, integrity, and spectrum. Those are some of the main performance characteristics for any radio navigation system. And if you want a definition on what those actually are, the Federal Radio Navigation Plan specifically defines all of them. But when the DoD is looking at various systems, these are some of the characteristics that they're looking at to judge whether it's appropriate or better than what we have today. I did not make this chart, but I roughly agree with it. So as performance increases, vulnerability roughly increases. So right now, GNSS is the best we have out there. It's going to provide the most accurate timing, the most accurate positioning, but again, it's more vulnerable than a system on your platform that does not rely on any external information and is not integrated with anything else. So you really have to consider how reliable does your system need to be, what's the threat environment, and what level of performance do you have when you're deciding whether it's appropriate for a use case. So alt PNT in industry. So I'm representing PMWA 170 here, so when I say aligned with PMWA 170 PNT programs of record, that's advocating for my program office, but really this is the same for the Navy and the same for the DoD. So we want enhancements to GPS-based systems to retain resilient solutions. If we're having problems with GPS, maybe we want to look at other GNSS, maybe we want to look at things that help GPS fight through that jamming or signal degradation. We want solutions that support integrity. So we want additional PNT sensors and advanced algorithms that are able to say whether we should trust GPS or other sources. We want complementary technologies to blend with the GPS data that we're having and to work with each other so they can be successfully fused to provide one source of PNT. We want software-defined antenna electronics and software-defined receivers, so we're not locked into just getting GPS for our anti-jam. We want to be able to choose, hey, maybe we want alt-nav, maybe we want another GNSS, maybe we want a new commercial constellation. So we want that flexibility to be able to reprogram our antennas and antenna electronics and receivers so we don't have to field a brand new system every time we want to ingest new information. And then we want non-GPS-based positioning systems and non-GPS-based timing systems for when GPS won't be available. And we want to be able to integrate all of this together easily, quickly, and affordably. So aligning with DoD's Modular Open System Approach Initiative, we want standardized messaging, standardized interfaces, so we can quickly get this information in, get it fused, and get it out to the consumer without an expensive and lengthy modernization time. With that, sorry, I have one more slide before I pass it off to Bill. So this is not an exhaustive list, but many people don't know how to get their technology into programs of record. So I just put a little bit of guidance out there. So DoD program offices have a variety of different contractual vehicles to test your system and to potentially transition it to part of a program of record. So the small business innovative research and small business technology transfer programs I've seen be extremely successful doing this. They provide funding initially independent of programs of record, so a program office doesn't necessarily need to go back to their resource sponsor to request money to actually start doing some testing, to start doing some initial development, and be able to provide objective quality evidence to their resource sponsor that further investment is worth it. This is targeted at small businesses, but small businesses are able to subcontract to larger businesses, and there's been a lot of, this has been a great way to quickly get companies working on solutions the DoD needs. In addition to CBERs and STTRs, there's CRADAs, so Cooperative Research and Development Agreements. So this is where you can take technology being developed in Navy or government labs, or if you just want to collaborate with some government experts, you're able to sign a CRADA and then work with the government. The government's not able to provide you funding, but they can provide other support and really work towards developing a solution. And then outside the DoD program office, there's ONR. So the Office of Naval Research has funding lines dedicated to positioning, navigation, and timing, and they're able to help take your technology from low technology readiness levels to a high enough levels that we can actually start planning a transition into programs of record. And they'll pair you with Navy program offices that they think would be a good fit for your technology. And again, I'm not an expert in this. This is just stuff that I'm aware of. There are a whole bunch of different authorities and things to look into. So don't think, oh, it's too hard to actually get my technology to the Navy. There are a lot of government authorities out there, and there are mechanisms. And talking to the program offices or talking to ONRs, they can get you connected to the right resources. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Bill to talk about non-geostationary and how that relates to alt PNT.
All right, so yesterday I gave a quick overview on the state of the non-geostationary orbit SATCOM, and you might think that we're all liquored up on positioning, that it's all about getting people to places and accurately getting them there. I want to make sure you're familiar with the fact that timing is more critical than anything else. Without timing, actually even positioning doesn't quite work out. So yesterday, SpaceX came up and talked to you about their 100 gigabit per second links between satellites. If you do the math on that, that turns out to be 10 picoseconds of time accuracy between those satellites. And so we've tried to sort of interpolate that capability into positioning and timing delivery and such. Today at the panel, you'll hear from AFRL and a company Link, and I believe Zona is going to be here as well. They'll tell you a little bit more about what they're doing in the PNT space that advances accuracies and such. SpaceX yesterday sort of touched on their desire to get to a terabit per second between satellites. That's 1 picosecond. That's ridiculously hard to pull off. In a picosecond, we're talking about 3 centimeters that a light would travel. That's the kind of accuracy we're trying to achieve. And by the way, speed of light is too damn slow. Somebody work on that, please. So with that, actually, I'm going to, rather than going through these slides, because I touched on a lot of this yesterday, but we do have SLAM time, which is a industry government interchange, which if you're interested in that event, actually many of you have already been to that event, come see me and we'll get you on the list. I'm going to skip some slides and switch over to another slide deck that it's a bit of a repeat from yesterday. So as I mentioned yesterday, we are seeing a whole bunch of constellation builders showing up. That includes folks from China, which we're not happy about. I had not put it on this slide deck, I guess. But we're working with about 23 constellation builders now, 23. I mean, this feels like the early days of the automotive industry, right? When we had 300 companies making cars, and we're down to what, big 5 or 6 or whatever it is. It's a great time because the best of the breed will survive, and many are in this room, like OneWeb, they've already launched 600 plus satellites. Telesat, you're right around the edge. A tiny little company called Link is launching satellites. But those in red have committed to building PNT-capable satellite features. So it's not all about data throughput. And of course, SDA's got even more than just simple data and PNT services, which we can't get into here. But at the heart of it all, as Michael mentioned, without PNT, all this is for naught. So along those lines, Michael sort of touched on the different flavors of getting to a assured or alternate PNT. And signals of opportunity was the first one that we picked off on. Iridium was actually the best source of soup, as we like to call it, for quite some time because it broadcast time. Without a subscription to that, you can actually derive your position off of this. And that was pretty good, and companies like StarNav, Toyon, and so on have been playing with this for a bit. But we're starting to see collaborative waveforms. I say collaborative, and I put Starlink in there, but they are sort of collaborating. They like to build everything in a vertical sense, but we've had Professor Todd Humphreys decompose their waveform, and they've been able to sort of utilize some features, which I can't get into here, to derive positioning down into the sub-meter accuracies. That's pretty darn good. And more importantly, that's in urban canyons. So when you're driving down these tight building corridors and your GPS is going wonky, they were able to actually keep you on track within about 3 or 4 meters. Now, companies like Toyota Motor and other automotive industries, unlike Tesla, where they're using LiDAR and all this exotic stuff, they want to use cheap stuff. If you've ever spoken with Toyota and asked about the radar they use in the front of the vehicle for collision avoidance, you'd be shocked to learn that they're paying $11 for that unit. That you could build a complete radar system en masse for 11 bucks. Biggest cheapskates going ever, but that's great. They drive industry really well. So collaborative waveforms are pretty neat, and you saw what SpaceX said when Professor Humphreys mentioned that, hey, if you use 1.6% of your data throughput, we might be able to get into the double-digit centimeter scale accuracy. So they said, nice result, but we can't afford engineering distraction at present time or we'll go bankrupt. It's pretty interesting that every last bit counts for them. They're achieving, by the way, more than 4 bits per second per hertz. Pretty impressive from space. Of course, the best way to do it is purpose-built. I'm talking GNSS, okay? Not necessarily anything other than GNSS. Michael's already shown you a variety of other examples like celestial nav. As far as I know, the Chinese don't know how to move a star yet, but they're working on it. Now, Michael also talked to you about the dissipation of signals and such. If you look at GPS, it lives at about 20,000 kilometers, and modern LEO SATCOM is somewhere between 300 to 900 kilometer. Using that R-squared dissipation, we're talking about LEO satellites having signals that are 32 dB hotter. That's more than 1,000 times stronger than GPS. And even MEO, for SES and Power and others, they have about 10 dB better signal strength. So on top of that, GPS is a sparse constellation, about 32 active satellites, and then they're going to increase that number over time, but actually this slide is data too. There are more than 8,000 satellites in LEO now. SpaceX, as you know, is trying to get to 42,000. We have Amazon Kuiper trying to get to 3,232, actually, no number. We have Link and others. OneWeb is probably going to the next gen, and they'll get to about 1,400 satellites. It's going to be busy up there. So lots of objects. So we boldly state in an unclassified briefing that kinetic effects are significantly reduced, the Kessler effects and all that. And there are studies that these things used to be TS, and they've been deprecated only because the proof is so strong that we can get there. Trying to jam all of that is rather difficult. So in the Ukrainian conflict, the first thing that happened when SpaceX dropped their Starlink terminals in field was GPS jamming. Those terminals, satellites, all rely on GPS. So Russians did a great job. This is unclassified setting now. They took that network down. SpaceX coded a fix for that, which basically said, tell me roughly where you are within 20 kilometers, and we will geolocate you and give you the proper position and time fix. So less than 24 hours later, they actually had a fix. Now, the second fix that we asked them to do is to dig a little trench and put the terminal below the trench. And all the localized GPS signals went right over the trench. It also took care of the shrapnel damage from explosives and such, and GPS continued to work. So sometimes it's not always about technology that solves problems. Some clever techniques, I call it the $10 anti-jam as a shovel. And with commodity satellites going up at a rapid pace, SpaceX alone, at least 23 satellites going up every week. And so it's hard to keep up with all these launches. And very soon you'll see additional launches from the 23 constellation builders we're working with. Jessica is not here just yet, but she briefed something like this yesterday. And if you look at the number there, when they did this with one satellite up and 2 surrogates on the ground, they got 1 meter RMS accuracy. Recently, they've been playing with a few more, and they'll be launching, I believe, in June timeframe or something like that, May, June. When they get their 250 satellites up, the 5 centimeter RMS accuracy, they think they're going to get down to sub-centimeter accuracy. Now, urban canyons, you're still going to have issues. Multipath and all that is pretty difficult to overcome. And they're not the only game in town, obviously. TrustPoint is not here. They too will launch satellites. I think Zona is going to launch 250, and TrustPoint is going to launch about 600. So their aim is not just to provide PNT services such as this, and the defense version, which I can't really get into here. If you remember in the early days of the commercial services, there were some errors introduced into the GPS. They're willing to work with us in that regard. So, yeah, can't touch on it much here, but you could see what a cooperative system would allow us to do in times of need. So that's the bulk of what I wanted to put forth for you, that we have lots of sources of alternatives, and NGSO is playing a major role. And so I'm going to just quickly mention once again SLAM time, SATCOM, LEO, and MEO, Technical Information Meetings and Exchange. This is where industry and government really works together to address technology gaps, issues, and such. And industry's been phenomenal at leaning forward and making things happen. As part of those engagements, we've had OneWeb put their terminal on the Abraham Lincoln, and we did a interchange into a skiff with a call with Abraham Lincoln using OneWeb. Starlink also plays a role. For those that weren't here yesterday, because PNT services and everything is so critical to all this, we realized that you can't just simply have high throughput from Starlink, Amazon, OneWeb, and whatnot. Without the ability to transfer time, have a time reserve in space, it's all meaningless. So you'll hear from Dr. Joe Brobman shortly on what they're doing with Johns Hopkins APL on some experimentation they've done recently, and it's pretty impressive. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. We'll get to that point. With that, Michael, you want to come up and take any questions, or you want to summarize?
Yep, so happy to answer any questions on alt PNT, and if it's NGSO specific or specific technology, I might pass it over to Bill. Go ahead.
Good morning, Alf Carroll with Raytheon. That was an excellent brief, and a lot of our newest engineers are looking to really engage, and we do a lot of work with small businesses. You mentioned the SBR program. That's kind of my day job, to work on that, work and enable that. Is your brief going to be available? There's so many people at our company and some of the small businesses I work with that would benefit from your briefing. Is that something we can get after the fact?
Yeah, the whole brief is distro A, so it should be available.
Yeah, how do we actually do that? Is that a follow-up with you offline? And same with Bill, same question.
Yeah, if you give me your card, I'll make sure that we send
Okay.
it out to whoever wants it.
Thank you very much, but excellent brief.
Thank you.
So, strange question for you. With the advent, with everybody looking at AI as like the next greatest evolution or revolution in technology, is there any space for AI and alternative or assured PNT?
I think there definitely is space for AI in assured PNT primarily. So PNT fusion systems, if they're good, want to make sure that they're not ingesting any data that they don't trust. So algorithms that determine integrity or that determine how data should be fused or whether it should be fused at all or thrown out definitely can be AI-based, as well as jamming and spoofing detection is another area where AI algorithms can definitely play a part.
Is the program office getting after that, or are you looking for industry to kind of lead the way with respect to integrating AI into A2 PNT capabilities?
The program office does have an effort using AI technology for one of those applications, but we are looking for industry to come to us and say what they have available or what they could potentially develop. So we're open to any ideas that they think could improve our performance and help the warfighter.
Would AI utilization in A2 PNT and NGSO be something that you would have a topic on at the next slam time, Mr. Jew?
Okay, put me on the spot. That's what O6s do to me. Anyhow, so yes, actually, we are trying to plan a PNT-focused NGSO summit, and that'll be at the Naval Postgraduate School, who's our co-sponsor, and to be announced. So come see me if you want to get on the distribution list. And oh, by the way, if you do get the invite, you better respond quickly because I have put 3 stars on notice. And in fact, Captain Givens, who helped organize the event, could not make it in. So you must respond quickly. I want to mention a couple of things. SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research, Rapid Innovation Fund. There's lots of funding opportunities, as Michael talked about. And the person you want to talk to is Ms. McLeana Mazzoni here. And she is our killer S&T APM. She executes dozens of contracts. And in fact, I think she executes more funds than some program offices as a whole. So she is carrying dollar signal assembled. You should carry a big over gold something. Anyhow, so we are working that, and actually, speaking of AI and such, AI is more ML, right? So we won't quite say AI yet, but even simple things like Bayesian filters, particle filters, scented Kalman filters. If you think about that, that's sort of early days of AI, and AI counts on that. So we're already doing that in GPNTS, which is made by Raytheon, GPS-based position, navigation, and timing services. But if you have some crazy ideas or clever ideas, I want crazy, by the way, clever stuff, please talk to Ms. McLeana, and we will go from there, and we won't do a directed award. We want competition in this space, and with that, we may release a few topics, so keep your ear to the ground. And as Michael mentioned, it doesn't mean you must be a small business. If you're a large corporation, please find small companies to work with that you could synergize with, and that works the best. We get efficiencies there.
Good morning, Kate Ortman with Rivet Operations. Apparently I moved away from the source of information. Question is about the Navy specifically, progress towards testing quantum sensing navigation. I understand the Air Force tested on an aircraft in August of 2023 during an exercise. Can you give an update on where Navy is in testing surface, subsurface?
This is definitely an area where I'm going to need to express a little ignorance. I know that there have been efforts in AUKUS towards doing some of that research and potentially doing some of that testing. I know that ONR has looked at various quantum technologies, but I'm not aware of whether they have been tested by the Navy.
Yeah, I'll comment that Dr. Tommy Willis from ONR Code 31. He's been doing some work in this space, neutron vacancies. It's not my area, but we are aware of some of the work that's going on, and if ONR Code 31 was here, he would tell you a little bit more. Dr. Ekstrom has an answer.
I'm going to step in and speak for ONR. Several very successful in the Trident Warrior series demonstrations at sea, commercial partners, as well as some indigenous government lab efforts. Really good results in clock performance and inertial sensor performance, to include estimation of position through gravity anomaly and local vertical deformations. So yeah, it's ONR is on it, and then I'm going to follow up with one question. I'm going to prompt you to tell maybe an FNC transition story to put some reality to your comments about ONR as a path through to the programs of record.
Sure. Thanks for the answer and thanks for the question. So I think I can talk at Distro A about the Navy's effort to transition technology from ONR into Navy program of record. So one of the types of alternate PNT systems I talked about was celestial navigation. That's when the Navy is working to integrate on certain surface ship platforms right now. So, the Navy for the longest time has been, we have GPS, we have inertial navigation systems, that's good enough for us. But as the PNT strategy is said and directed, that's not good enough anymore. So we've gone from conceptual idea to an ONR future naval capability. They developed the technology and they transitioned it into program of record and are currently testing and shortly going to start fielding that celestial technology across the fleet.
And that's the No Gaps program, right?
Yeah.
It's a non-GPS aided for positioning. Oh my God.
Surface ships.
Okay. And by the way, McLean has been involved in that project as well. And along those lines of Celestial, we've also worked with a local company called Trex, and they just couldn't get the cost down. And along the lines of Celestial, every satellite that's in the LEO orbit, and for that matter, most satellites, do have celestial star tracking. So it is really difficult to spoof a satellite, or at least we think so for now.
Mr. Berger, thanks for the presentation. Colonel Tom McGee, I work at Marine Corps' Combat Development Directorate. So have within my portfolio non-aviation PNT, of course, as a naval aviation side, our aviation platforms are closely aligned with PMA 170, and of course, as the department's consolidating, they'll do the same. But I just wanted to take an opportunity to shamelessly solicit for solicitations. The last slide, or really the whole brief from the threat frame to the opportunities. On the ground side within the Marine Corps, we're looking to aggressively expand the integration of multiple alt and assured systems, really just as Mr. Berger highlighted. So as we're coming up on plane, we're working with ONR and some of the team in the Navy that has done some sets and reps on service level reference architecture. So the point being is, as we drill down on that reference architecture, we're going to get into our NAVWAR compliance assessments per platform and domain. And when we come out of that, the intent is to have as many options for us to be able to take a look at that fit those parameters and provide a distributed view of alt and assured as we move forward. So working with our warfighting lab, and I know there's some folks in here that are already doing that, I'm looking to aggressively expand that. So if you think you've got play in that space, I'm more than happy to start having conversations with you about that to see how we can accelerate that. We're on a super fast timeline to put some points on the board and expand our portfolio right now. So I'm going to stay here through this. So if you got a card or something like that, I'm happy to link up with anybody, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. The technical warrant holder for the Navy just released a new PNT reference architecture. So if you're Aaron, okay, and you're connected to Amy Dykstra for okay, so got it. Got it. Any other questions?
One more, thanks. Sir, you alluded to some upcoming SBIR topics. Could you speak to any more detail on those? A timeline?
I cannot.
Not yet, okay.
If I told you, you can't compete. So. But speaking of which, we are interested in timing sources. There's this also assumption that cesium is everywhere, and so we're good to go. We'd like to see a little bit more research in atomic clocks. We've sponsored some work in the past, again, SBIRs on rubidium-87 isotopes. The thing about cesium is that the half-life is roughly about 5-6 years, so you're replacing these cells. They're not cheap. We were looking at rubidium-87, which has a half-life of, I believe, something north of 20 billion years or something like that. We'd like to get to a point we don't have to replace it, outlive all of us. So we will show some interest in timing, because I think we've been so liquored up on positioning that we forgot about timing.
Any other questions? Okay, before I get off the stage, I've only been in this role since about June or July, so I don't know many of the faces in this room, but I'd like to get to know you. So I'll be here over the course of the day, and I'll be sticking around after the panel that immediately follows this. So if you want to come up and introduce yourself, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, thanks everyone.
Great, thank you. We'll resume at 9:30, is that right, sir? Yes. Quarter after.